Okay, can you help me find my presentation, please? It's really a delight to be here talking with you. It's interesting what Jane says about how difficult it is to find universities to work with. Fionn mentioned the Home Improvements Project. One of the aspects of that project was actually going around all the architecture schools in Britain to actually try and to make a document or a searchable database so you can actually find the research that's going on, because it seemed to be the practitioners we were talking about couldn't find us and what we were doing at all. And this just and this is part of my fascination of just surveying territories and trying to bring things together in a useful form that people can do business with. And that's why I'm going to talk about the value of architecture. And indeed the cultural value of architecture in homes and neighbourhoods. Now, you may all, this may be all old hat to you lot. You may, the kind of things I'm going to talk about, you may already know. And if you do already know, please tell me. I really want to know that as part of the research. But I'm hoping in drawing together some threads around the value debate, it will give you confidence or more teeth to ask awkward questions, or and to help us answer them. So whether you know this stuff or not, you're a very varied group of people, and I'm sure you've got a wonderful wealth of experience to bring to the issue. But I see it as our role, and our role in Sheffield, as being people who cross disciplines and do knowledge exchange and link up with folk who don't normally talk to each other. And in a sense, this is what my this talk is about. Thank you very much. So, value of architecture, and this is part of, I've got a funded project with the Arts and Humanities Research Council, the cultural value of architecture in homes and neighbourhoods, and in a sense this little talk is a part of that project. So why proving value is key? Well, I'm sure you all know why proving value is key. It's becoming such a central policy issue. But these are the things I'm going to talk about. Why proving value is key, what we already know about the value of architecture, good design, whatever you want to call it, building with thought, building beyond the absolute basics. I'm going to look a little bit about why value is so hard to prove. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about our project, the Cultural Value Project. And then we're going to do a little bit of a brainstorm. And I'm sorry about this, but you're going to do a little bit of work too. But hopefully we're going to get something, I'm sure we'll get something very interesting out of it, whichever way it goes. So that's the structure of the next 30 minutes. Architecture. I think it's, at Sheffield, we're very interested in trying to work out what on earth architecture is, unscrambling it and making it intelligible to the outside world. I think architecture's done a very poor job at showing its value. So this is, in essence, part of what we're doing. And this cultural value project in architecture in homes and neighbourhoods is part of a much wider Arts and Humanities Research Council project on lots of aspects of cultural value, the arts, cultural assets like book groups and dog walking. All these things are being studied, and we're all learning from each other on how to do this. So why proving value is key? Well, as Kirk Hamilton and Watkins, who are US academics and architects, write, the traditional, relatively unstructured approach to design-related decision-making is insufficient for the architectural challenges we face today, and possibly for the housing challenges. I mean, you have to tell me about that. But it's not enough to work on hunches, on things that have not been substantiated. And I'm told that this, and we have the Public Services Act, which has just come into place, which I don't know how many of you know about this. I mean, I learnt about it through register provider Eleanor Warwick, meaning that an organisation, including local authorities, government departments, NHS trusts and housing associations procuring public services, must review how the services commissioned and procured might improve social value in an area, and how through the procurement process these improvements can be secured. Well, I'm really interested to hear what you folk are doing about that one. Where do you even begin? Have we got the frameworks for demonstrating cultural value? I'm sure you've all had, from the limited conversations I've had with people in the room so far, I'm sure there's many useful beginnings being made. So why proving value is key? Well, I'm sure you know it is, but I think for us in in School of Architecture, we feel very passionately that good design actually does make people's lives better. And for a long time there was a terrible kind of blight upon architecture. The architects were deterministic. We said that our buildings made the world a better place, and it was all very caricatured, and then architects had their fingers burnt and really withdrew from ever saying that architecture did anything at all. And I think that's been a real loss to the profession, and I think now we've got to dust ourselves down and get back and show what we know to be the case, that good design can make our lives better, and increasingly there's a body of evidence really showing that that is the case. And clearly proving good value is key to communicate with non-experts who may be driven by numbers, by other things. At the moment they're not getting the value of good design. The industry is really, we're losing students, we're losing practitioners, the average architect is paid the same as a train driver. It's not an industry in a very, very good shape, and I think quite a lot of that is to do with communicating with non-experts. I apologise if this is architecture orientated. To me it is about good design, it's the value of that, but I articulate it as architecture. And most importantly, I mean, proving value is key to improving on what we do. I don't know how aware you are that post-occupancy is very, very rare in architectural practice, and architectural practitioners, I've done outside on the table out there, you can pick up if you're interested, is the RIBA report on the state of practice-based research in housing. And we have to say that the state of practice-based research in housing is at quite a low level. And it's largely because there's no time or money for post-occupancies. But there are enlightened practices like Archetype who see post-occupancy as part of their menu of things that they offer to customers, and the customers like it. Another excuse is, it'll affect our indemnity insurance. Just talking with Jane and Menaka now, I think we've got to get the insurance companies to reward, to give a no claims bonus to people who do post-occupancy or something like that. There's lots and lots of work on that area. But so architecture is constantly reinventing the wheel because it doesn't, the improvements are not getting out there, being disseminated in a rigorous way from which we can learn. We have to do that. We have to have lobbying power. I don't know, you're probably aware that Terry Farrell, so Terry Farrell has got the Farrell report on the state of architecture in Britain at the moment, and he had a call for evidence recently, and what we were able to muster, because I was doing feeding into the heads of school response and the RIBA response, what we were able to muster in terms of evidence for the value of architecture was quite alarming. There's a lot of work we need to do, and until we do that, we haven't got much lobbying power. And of course, there's been the recent review of standards and guidance, and I gather that's been very swift, and people haven't had much chance to plug into that one. We need to be at the ready with evidence to feed into those sort of reviews, and to make sure that our values, our standards and guidance actually are based on lived experience, based on our limited knowledge of the world as it is. Because value immediately leads to standards and guidance, obviously. So, I mean, this is, I just throw this in. Why employ an architect? This is a book called Do It With an Architect, but it seems there to be a general confusion as to what architects do, who they are, and what their contribution is. And this is a problem that we are afflicted with as a profession. I don't know how it impacts on your work in housing, but if you're trying to promote good design, I suggest that there must be links, the problems must be linked. And I don't think this vision of the architect with the bow tie really helps either. So, and we suffer things like the Sterling Prize, total loss of interest, started off at prime time, now not even on the telly anymore, sending all the wrong messages about what architecture might actually about. I think certainly that's what everyone I know feels like. I mean, we should have a Sterling Prize based on a level playing field, on rigorous evidence. So what do we already know about the value of architecture, the cultural value of architecture, the value of good design? Well, architecture's been going for 6,000 years, or however you want to say it. So you think we would know quite a bit, but actually we don't know much. We don't know much about what effect our profession, what effect good design has upon the world. And I'm talking about the context in the UK, but UK is pretty much the world leader in research, in architectural research. So what we don't know here is likely to be quite strongly linked to what we don't know everywhere else. And we have a real potential for being world leaders on bringing this thing into the 21st century. I took this photograph in an office in China recently, but this is a classic thing you have in offices. We have millions of these books down in our Western Bank Library down there. Beautiful building. Do go and pop in if you have a chance. Stacks of books, and I'm responsible for some of them too, on lovely buildings, lovely architecture. Generally very impressionistic, generally extremely unrigorous, and generally built on a whole load of absolutely unsubstantiated assumptions. And when we've been doing the cultural value of architecture project, we've had to disregard all of this. Virtually, it's just not, this stuff is not generally very useful to actually trying to demonstrate our value. I'm being polemical here, but this is the case, and sometimes this stuff has got very radically in the way. What else do we have? We have stacks of grey literature. I've learnt this new term, grey literature, all the reports, all the documentations that quangos and bodies and charities are producing to try and make the world a better place. I think, and apparently grey literature has really exploded, perhaps I suggest because of the powerlessness these bodies feel in the face of the current government. So there's stacks of this literature, and this is the focus of our cultural value project, because we're doing a critical review of all the documentation that's out there to try and make a sort of framework that people can understand. So there is masses of this, and I don't know how you folk, as RPs, housing providers, how you get into this all and whether you can keep abreast of it, or what help you need to keep abreast of it. And some of it is magnificent, the CABE work. I mean, I just get more and more respect for what's going on, and some of it is really very dross-like. We also have this stuff. This is university academic refereed journals, and this, in my experience with architectural practitioners, I don't know if this is your experience, this is the stuff that they never look at. They know it's the most useful stuff, they know it's not going to sell them the Thrislington cubicles, but they don't look at it, and they can't find a way into all this material that crosses great interdisciplinary barriers. So we need to find a way to make it accessible, to bring people right up to speed with the most recent research, because there's wonderful stuff in here if you excavate into it, but very few people have the time. And I've been part of the research information network in the RIBA on what kind of information do practices use, and this was a brainstorming session we had. So research intensive information, refereed journals, academic stuff is the least possibly used. The information, and I don't know if this is your experience, most likely to be used is colleague in-house Google for designing your future cities. So as universities, I see that as a really sad indictment of universities, personally, but we're all obviously in it together. So when I've been struggling to find information on what we know about the value of architecture, the cultural value of architecture in homes and neighbourhoods, I show this book because this is the book, the most useful book of all, David Halpern's book. I mean, but I think it's 1990s, early 1990s it's published, but it's got an absolute, it brings the whole field up to date with that point in a really rigorous way. So I really strongly recommend that book. But we need the 2013 version of that book, and we need each year we need to know what the current state of knowledge is. From that book, and from my research so far, I've started to derive some kind of, I've started to get an understanding of some of the research that's been done on some of our kind of urban myths. And I don't know how much you know about these urban myths. For example, high-rise housing is deeply vilified in our circles, I would say. But if you read Halpern's book, there's actually high-rise housing is not essentially bad at all. It can make women depressed. There's a tiny increment of evidence that says multiple studies of high-rise housing can make women, mothers with kids, a little bit, it can make it not work for them. But essentially, there is no evidence that high-rise housing, if maintained properly, doesn't work. Other urban myths, other things I've got to the bottom of this. There's a real urban myth in architecture that social interaction is always good. Well, it's not always good. And I don't just cite one example here. There are moments when I'm sure you've encountered it in your housing lives when people do not want to talk to each other. They don't want to hear each other. They don't want to see each other. And to assume that social interaction is always good is an absolute disaster. Peter Hall has written a fantastic book on the future of the city recently, and it is widely, lots of research has shown that socially homogenous neighbourhoods tend to be more successful. And I really want to get to the bottom of how councils deal with this when they want to, they obviously have to create neighbourhoods that are not homogenous. How do you deal with that? So these are some of the things I've had to come through. Now, part of our home improvements project, again, you can read about, there's lots of stuff out there. We've got a big project on parking. We're told that parking is one of the biggest housing hot potatoes you could ever have. And one of our projects is really producing some fantastic evidence on that. This is the parking space, Pace to Park. It's going to be a website with some very sort of impactful, we hope, research on exactly how people do use parking. But part of that is that all these garages that have been built for people, this was working with volume house builders, they just don't use them for parking. They, of course, use them for all the storage that those houses don't actually have. I mean, that's common sense, isn't it? But we're producing evidence on this basis. And the one that really struck me, and again, I don't know if you know about this one, is homeowners don't care about modern versus traditional. All they want, they want interesting, they want well-crafted detail. I'm going to zoom on. And another one that really floors me, and we never discuss in architecture schools, is the fact that architects and non-architects see the world completely differently. So where does that leave you in the discussions of good design? And there's masses of research that shows exactly that case. So we have to find a way to cross those barriers. I suppose the one research thing that comes through very loud and strong through everything is that participation is overwhelmingly worthwhile. And I'm sure that's your experience as well. But as we know, because we have a huge emphasis on participation in Sheffield, participation is not easy. So that's the thing. So those are some of the things we know. And here's another one. Mental health of residents can be adversely affected by a mismatch between the aesthetic aspirations of the resident with the actuality of the design. Again, I'd be curious to know if these things ring true, or indeed if you knew all of these things. But these are things, reading the grey material, reading the referee journals, these are sort of information that I'm starting to glean. And I know, because I've been a client advisor on design projects, I know that architects come in and pitch for work, and they're extremely bad at using this sort of information to say, I designed it like this because of that fact, this thing that was a strong body of evidence suggested was the case. And it's just missing a trick completely, and I wonder if the same is the case for you in your fight for funding. So why is value so hard to prove? Well, why? Obviously, it's very difficult to find comparable situations to compare like with like, which is always the basis of any kind of good research project. And if you're interested in that, I do recommend Halpin's book. David Halpin's now gone into the government as the kind of guru of research, but it's just a great book. Value is very culturally specific. What works in Scotland may not work in Wales, may not work in London, may not work in Sheffield. So that adds a strong complication to the whole thing. The terminology is slippery. What is architecture? What is good design? What is a neighbourhood? We don't have, what is sustainability? Just even pinning down the names. You spend your life doing that, and we have to sort of fight our way past that to just have a go at things. And we have no up-to-date summary, as far as I'm aware, and please tell me if I'm wrong, we have no up-to-date summary of what we do know so far, what is out there, where things are at here and now, which is really what my project is about. And as Halpin very strongly brings forth, there's a terrible fragmentation of knowledge across disciplines. So what environmental psychologists learn very rarely makes it into planning or to sustainability or whatever. We're just not talking to each other enough in any shape or form. So, just to finish up, I want to talk about the cultural value of architecture in Homes and Neighbourhoods project. That's the Twitter hash. Please go to the website. Need your help. This film that we're doing today is just going to be one of the resources on that site. And we pulled in some wonderful films made by the HCA. We're trying to collect evidence of research, evidence of value. So the aim of this project is to provide an accessible and critically rigorous summary of evidence and approaches to evidencing the cultural value of architecture in the UK. Just as a starting point, we know that we're going to be slammed for doing this project, but someone's got to start somewhere, is our thinking on this one. And we would like to try and suggest a framework for evidencing value in the future. We're never ever going to say anything categorical, this is the truth, that is. We know it. Everything is, it's going to be a very, very difficult philosophical question, but we want to make a kind of suggestion of where to start. And we're also, at the other end of it, trying to gather evidence of value. So on the one hand, we're trying to see what's out there, but also we're gathering little moments of value that we do know. So that's where I really need help from you lot. And we also need to identify gaps in knowledge. Where do we really need to find something out that will help all of us to demonstrate that we're doing a good job and improving well-being, which is ultimately the aim of all of this. So we started off by, we have to make definitions, and looking at all the literature and everything, we come to the conclusion that architecture, or good design, it works on us in various ways. It can influence mental and physical states. It can influence networks and communities. It has a symbolic effect. Architecture can have a symbolic effect. It can change the feeling of a neighbourhood. Just going in and being there can make people feel better. We've done even student film projects of difficult neighbourhoods, and you present the neighbourhood in a positive light, has cheered, visibly seemed to cheer people up. Now that's not a very scientific one. And there's transformations made through the design process itself, of going in there and working with people and supporting people to develop their view of what they want to be. And I feel that that is a really key. I just don't think the architecture profession, with the new national planning framework and the local neighbourhood plans, I just don't think architects have grasped that at all. There's so much room to be done with that one. I also think, and this is one I've added, those are our four main strands. I think architectural representation techniques can be very useful for mapping cultural value of events and places. Where were the people? What happened? What was, to try and map impact. Architecture is the only profession that solves problems spatially and can also visualise these problems. So I think architecture's got a good use in that point of view. So these are the strands within which the project is subdivided. Value is defined in terms of well-being to the greatest number. Obviously, we could spend our whole life studying well-being, but we're just going to skip past that onto the next stage. And we recognise it's constantly changing and it's highly culturally specific. So that you have to sort of suspend disbelief when you're doing a project like this, otherwise you would never move on to the next stage. Then we get on to generating evidence. Where do we go? So what we're doing, as I've mentioned, we're doing a critical review of mainly UK documentation on value over the last 20 years, and we're bringing in university research, all the grey literature and the referee journal, things that I think that are difficult for the average person who's working tremendously hard on their job to actually get to grips with. And so that's what we're doing. We're going to try and make a framework that people understand what might be out there. And when I mentioned the grey literature thing, I mean, there's even books on how to look at grey literature. And actually there's studies of grey literature in various fields, but there is no study of grey literature in our field at all. There's nobody knows what's out there at all. So I suppose in a sense, this project will also bring together the field of grey literature on housing and environment and the home. So we're looking at doing critical review. We've got various members of staff, experts on old people, on identity conservation, on diasporic experience. We've got experts beavering their way through these different strands, bringing their PhDs and stacks of other knowledge to bear on the matter in hand. We're going to augment this with a public consultation done through our Sheffield Live Lab, which we have live projects, community projects is a great tradition in Sheffield, and we're setting up the Live Lab, which is a city-based outreach arm for doing public consultation. And we're going to have a go at doing a public consultation on this. I see Eleanor over there. Cabe did a project about doing a similar thing, and they focused it around the subject of issue of beauty, because you just can't go, clearly you can't go and ask the public, what do you think of architecture? They don't even know what it is. So it's going to be a difficult one, that. But we clearly got to find out what the public feel as a beginning. And we're also doing consultation with a wide body of experts who might have some input, ideas about this, in a whole range of fields: civic society, exclusion, sociology, and it's kind of snowballing of finding new people to talk about and getting their opinions. Because if you don't know if there's an area of research that no one has ever done before, one way of tackling it is actually just ask everybody what they think about it at that point. So we're taking it from different angles and hopefully coming together with something at the end. And so garnering everybody's opinion. So it's an ongoing project, and we really need your help. And that brings me to the little bit of homework I'm going to ask you to do, or to help me out with. Post-it notes. Now, can I ask you to help me dish these out? Sorry, folks, it's the dreaded post-it notes, and one per row. If you could take three each. I'm going to garner your opinion on certain subjects, and I will use this stuff in the research project. And if you tell me this is a load of baloney and it's not necessary, that's useful too. So I really want to hear what you think. It's anonymous. You can say anything you like, unless you really want to tell me about something in particular. So I was going to give you a colour for each question, but that was just way too complicated. So if you could put a big number 1 on question 1 on your question 1 post-it note. There's more here. I have an embarras de richesse of post-it notes. And students among us, staff members amongst us, tell us what you think as well. Really, really want to hear. So this is number 1 question, just a little bit difficult. But please, just your gut feeling, because qualitative, your feelings about things are really important. I think that's one of the things that put architects off research, because our research became very scientific and just about numbers and energy. More and more our research methods are very sophisticated and can take in subtle nuances of what people feel. And that is becoming collectively realised as vitally important. You can't get people onto energy reduction unless you know how they feel about it. People will put up with a leaky roof if they think the place is beautiful. There's so many irrational things that go across these kind of territories. So sticker 1, tell us something about what you think the value of architecture or good design is, if any. If you can think, what do you in your line of work or whatever you do feel that achieves? And if you feel there's no value, say there isn't, tell us that too. Okay, so that's sticker 1. And please put a big 1 on it. It's amazing, I know in these sticker things, whatever you say, people do everything different. Sticker 2, can you write down an example or point us in the direction of a case when good design has made, in your experience, has made things better in the realm of housing? Do you know of any case like that? And even if you tell me you don't know any case like that, it's quite interesting in a room full of 50 people that actually 50% couldn't think of any case. That's quite an interesting statistic to me. So could you say something about where the bin, I don't know, it can be as banal as bin stores or whatever, but actually made people feel better.
So do you want a name of a particular project? Or do you want what happened in that?
If you feel able to come clean with the name of a particular project that I can go hunting after, I'm very happy. That's even better for me, because that's something I can do business with. But, you know, you may not feel that way inclined. So that's number 2 sticker. And number 3 sticker, for those people who are very quick, can you write down one thing you think we need to know about the value, what do you need to know about value in the context of housing? So there's something you need, there's a gap in the research, a gap in the market, something that we need to know, something that universities should be really, really aiming to find out for you, to help you in your work. Apologies for that one. God, late at night. I'm finished. That's it, really. I mean, I will at the end of this session, I'll gather all the stickers up at the corridor, and I'm going to put them on the walls for you to have a little look at, to compare each other's experiences. I've never done a session like this before. Thank you for living with the experimental nature of this particular presentation. It's extremely useful to us, and I hope it will be useful to you. If you want to get involved, as I say, please do make contact with us, with me, Flora Samuel, or the Cultural Value Project, because we really, we just want to be useful in trying to make sense of an amazingly complicated but tremendously vital field. So that's it.
Should everyone just pass their quiz?
Well, if you feel ready, or if you want to keep working on them, as you might be a distraction, some people have written an epic essay. And during coffee, I'll do 1s and 2s and 3s along here.